Welcome back to Explaining Everything, the channel where we dive into the stories and mysteries behind everyday things. Today's question comes from one of our curious viewers, Big C Tyler, 99. Thanks for the great question, Tyler. You asked, how is oil drilled out in the ocean? Now, if your mental image involves a guy in swim trunks holding a straw and floating above a tiny black puddle, don't worry, we're going to clear that up fast. Ocean oil drilling is less pool floaty and more sci-fi skyscraper anchored to the seafloor by pure stress and engineering. So grab your hard hat and imaginary offshore paycheck because we're going drilling. Right here on Explaining Everything. Before anyone drills a hole in the ocean floor, they have to make sure there's actually oil down there. Wild idea, right? Geologists start by studying rock formations under the seabed using something called seismic surveying. Basically, they blast sound waves into the earth and listen for echoes, like underwater echolocation. But instead of finding dolphins, they're hoping to find gooey fossil juice trapped in porous rocks. Once they identify a potential site, they drill a test well called an exploratory well. It's kind of like poking a cake to see if it's baked, except the cake is 1,000 meters underwater, and the oven costs $10 billion. Now that we've found oil, it's time to build the rig. But not just any rig. There are several types, and they all sound like rejected names for transformers. First, jack-up rigs. Used in shallower waters, these stand on legs that get jacked down to the seafloor. Basically, it's an oil rig on stilts. Second, semi-submersibles. These rigs float, but are partially submerged, anchored to the seabed with massive chains. Think of it as a very expensive waterbed. Third, drill ships. These are literal ships that float around and drill through the floor of the ocean. Picture a cruise ship, but with fewer cocktails and way more grease. The type of rig used depends on how deep the water is. Some offshore rigs are drilling in water that's over 2 miles deep. That's like stacking 11 statues of liberty on top of each other and still needing a ladder. Now comes the fun part, drilling through thousands of feet of rock and ocean sludge. But before they go full speed ahead, they start with a large hole using a drill bit attached to a long pipe called a drill string. As they dig deeper, they keep inserting steel pipes called casings into the hole to keep it from collapsing. These casings are cemented in place, layer by layer. It's like building a straw made of steel and concrete, one sippy segment at a time. Oh, and the whole time, they pump a substance called drilling mud down the pipe. It's not actually mud. It's a high-tech, goopy cocktail that cools the drill bit, carries rock bits to the surface, and keeps underground pressure from turning the whole rig into a soda can in a microwave. And yes, they do have to watch pressure like a hawk. Mess up even a little, and boom! Underwater geyser. Nobody wants that, especially not the dolphins. Once they reach the oil reservoir, it's time to make it official. They install a steel tube called a production casing into the hole, cement it in, and then perforate it using shaped explosives so the oil can flow in. And no, it's not like opening a soda bottle and watching it fizz up. The oil doesn't just whoosh out on its own. They need to install valves and special systems called Christmas trees. Yes, They are called that because of the shape, but sadly, they don't come with ornaments. These control the pressure and allow workers to safely extract oil over many years. Imagine a faucet you absolutely don't want to leave running. Now you've got oil, but it's not very useful sitting in the middle of the ocean. Time to ship it to land. There are two main ways to get it back: pipelines or tanker ships. Pipelines are like undersea spaghetti stretching from the rig to the shore. They're built to survive salt water, pressure, and the occasional nosy shark. Tankers, on the other hand, are giant floating oil bathtubs that haul crude back to refineries. And before you ask, no, they don't just bucket it in. It's all pumped, measured, and monitored with way more care than anything in your kitchen. So, to recap, ocean oil drilling starts with a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek, continues with building the world's most over-engineered floaties, drills through miles of angry earth using robot straws and goop, taps into a giant underground oil sponge, and finally pumps it all back to shore using tubes longer than some highways. It's part science, part chaos, part extreme plumbing, and all done on a platform that's floating in the middle of nowhere while people drink coffee and hope nothing explodes. So the next time you drive a car, use plastic, or wonder how on earth people figured this out, just remember, it all started with someone looking at the ocean and thinking, yeah, I bet there's oil under there. If you enjoyed this deep dive into deep drilling, give us a like, drop a comment, make sure to subscribe, and maybe don't try drilling your own backyard. Also, if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next time here in the channel that answers all the why, what, who, where, and how questions you've always wondered about, here on Explaining Everything.